All right, hello everybody. Welcome to actually the first live on YouTube, the first one of many. Let's put it here. Now it is Sunday morning, so maybe there's going to be some people that might be sleeping, but the good thing is that we're going to have the replay. So if you are watching this as the replay, feel free to drop a comment and basically to let us know, to let me know if you've got any questions. On today's live, I've got here a few questions that are going to be basically from from students who are taking IELTS or maybe thinking about IELTS and PTE, questions related to these two exams. And well, look, without further ado, let's go and talk a bit about these ones. In case you, well, or for anyone that gets to be watching, you can jump into the live and basically just leave a question. Oh, not here. You can just basically leave a question in the comments box. And let's see. So the first question that we've got here is, which one is easier for people who have a basic level of English? Is it IELTS easier or is it PT easier? This is quite interesting because just about an hour ago, I was editing a video that is going to be coming up on here on YouTube real soon, and basically I was touching up on a few areas. One being that now we are seeing that more people are going from PTE into IELTS. And I think, I mean, this is something that I did not mention in the video. I will leave it in the comments of the live somewhere, on the description of the live somewhere, that basically, again, PT test takers are going into IELTS mainly because now PT is becoming more difficult. But I think the second reason why PT test takers are going into IELTS is maybe because IELTS is a bit more familiar, and probably in their English studies they have some experience with the IELTS test. Maybe it is in the activities that they practiced in school. Some of them maybe have done IELTS courses, and I feel that it can be a bit more relatable when it comes to deciding one test. So I think with this question here, which one is easier? Probably, but both will be difficult. Both will challenge you in different ways. But I would say that IELTS is going to be easier for people with a basic level of English. Another big reason why I think this is the case is because if you are watching this, and or maybe if you know someone who has a basic level of English, I want you to think about it this way. On PT Academic, you have to be doing what I'm doing right now. You have to talk to a microphone, blank screen, zero feedback. It's only like whatever the computer says or whatever the computer tells you after, you basically give your answer. This is something that for a lot of people it's extremely not a no-no, but it's something that a lot of people don't feel comfortable with. And this, I guess, is a big selling point of IELTS, that the speaking test is an interview. So at least you have a bit of feedback. There is a bit of an interaction. In case you don't know how the IELTS interview goes, it usually goes for about 10 to 15 minutes. I think, according to the British Council's website, it's more like 12 minutes, but I like to tell students 10 to 15 because, maybe you have like a bit of a shorter interview, or maybe it might be the case that, by the time you enter the room, while you wait, this and that, it will be, let's say, 15 minutes. But the biggest thing is that this is something that we are all used to, having, interactions with people, conversations, being interviewed before. So it is going to be challenging, of course. But I think that for someone with a basic level of English, I think the biggest challenge there with the IELTS interview is the fact that, we're going to get nervous. And it is basically dealing with those nerves. In PT, obviously, as I was saying a second ago, you do get nervous too, but it's a different kind of nervous, because this time it's like you are nervous because people are Sorry, because you've got people around you and you are talking to a screen. It's like what I'm doing right now with this live. It's just me and the camera, no feedback. Well, actually, sorry, that's wrong. The feedback comes from people that are leaving comments. But what I'm trying to say is that when you're practicing on PTE, or with PTE, I should say, it's like you're on your own in the speaking section. So that's like a different type of nerves. Plus, you are talking to the microphone, which is something that maybe for a lot of you, it is something that I would say if you put aside PTE study or PTE practice, a lot of people don't talk to a microphone unless you maybe have, a YouTube channel, unless you maybe do some form of social media, maybe you work doing, or sorry, maybe you work from home, or maybe at work you get to use Microsoft Teams or a program like that, or Zoom, and you have to basically do some kind of online work. But for the majority of people, it is not common to basically use microphones or like to talk to a microphone, and because of that, it adds an extra layer of pressure. Whereas you will be nervous because you're talking to a person, but that's, let's say, something that, again, it's expected to happen. We have all been interviewed, or maybe like, when you came to Australia or to whichever country that you visited, you need to talk to the customs officer at the airport. And that's always, a bit stressful. That's a bit like an interview. Obviously, it's not an English test interview, but it is an interview, or like a form of like communication. All of that, I think, is going to make it better. When I'm looking here at the question again, which one is going to be easier? So yes, probably for someone with a basic level of English, that will be a bit more easier, IELTS. There is another reason. I think, as you all know, IELTS has got the two modules. You've got IELTS General and IELTS Academic. And needless to say, IELTS Academic, it's going to challenge you more with more academic vocabulary, with longer texts. I'm going to be making a video explaining the biggest differences between these two exams. But on the IELTS General, you can expect, it is still going to be difficult, or it's going to challenge you. It's not like you go without studying and you're gonna, get a full score. No. But what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to like the vocabulary, or let's say the vocabulary, especially in the reading section, you will find that if you've got a basic level of English, you will struggle less compared to IELTS Academic or compared to PTE Academic, because PTE, it's only an academic test and there is no general PTE. And that can be bad news for some of us, or for some people preparing for PTE, because the vocabulary that it's there in the exam, in the listenings, with all the listening audios, with the reading questions, is going to challenge you a lot more. Also, comparing the two exams, PT has got a lot of questions where you get like different bits and questions about reading. And some of those questions don't only just, let's say, test your reading comprehension skills, which is, a main thing that is super common in IELTS, checking your reading comprehension. But the other challenge that PT has is that it's not only testing your reading comprehension, it is also testing your grammar. And I feel that just because of that alone, it makes PT more difficult, not only in reading, as I just said a minute ago, with different questions. PT, just to start, is going to definitely be more challenging. So if you, or someone that you know that is watching, is like, okay, I don't know which one I should take. My level of English is basic. Maybe I have to apply for a visa. Maybe I have to, do like I have to show my level of English with a certificate or with an exam. Maybe the way to go is going to be IELTS, because again, just by probabilities, is more likely that this person is going to be, let's say, more comfortable in the IELTS interview. Also, maybe that person has already studied English in some shape or form. So that means that that person has already like some idea of how the IELTS test will be. Some people joining the live, feel free to to drop a question, and thank you for watching, of course. So yes, in short, let's do that. Another thing I'll tell you before jumping into the next question has to do with the a big problem with PTE. I mentioned that in the video that I told you, it's in the description, and feel free to check it out later or at another time. And basically, another problem is that people that have a basic level of English going to PTE, and then they struggle. And one of the big reasons why they struggle is because they cannot understand the text. This has happened to me in class, and there are times where we are doing a bit of practice, and what happens is we're doing a reading question or maybe a listening question, and the students tell me, or like I look at a word and they don't ask me anything, and I know they're quiet, and I just go, have you ever seen this word before? Because it is a difficult word. It is something that maybe doesn't, you don't see on a regular basis, and students don't ask. But then when I ask them, have you seen this word before, they say, no, Emilio, I have no idea. So it becomes extremely challenging because there is a lot of, let's say, heavy vocabulary. And when I say heavy vocab, let me just say it in a different way. Both exams cover a lot of different topics, right? So, for example, you have the environment, you have work life balance, you have traveling, I don't know, let's say your neighborhood, sports, health, etc., right? Education. And with all the topics that you can get in both exams, the challenge with PTE in this example is that the the vocab that you get in certain topics, it is, let's say, very challenging first. Like, for example, let's say that the topic is let's say the topic might be, what could be a good topic? Let's say maybe with technology, right? It might be something like, for example, I don't know, let's say data breach or a data leak. And maybe the words breach and leak are not super, super hard, but for someone who has a basic level of English, is going to be a challenging word. And that will not happen in IELTS general. Maybe those words may appear, but the frequency is not going to be the same. So comparing, for example, an IELTS general with the PTE test, if you have a basic level of English, I think again you will struggle. It is going to be less challenging if you go with IELTS general. Again, it will still be difficult. So a lot of the times I tell students that I'm not here to be like, oh, only do IELTS or oh, only do PTE. Basically, I like to help you guys decide. Sometimes when before students come and study with me, we decide together which test is best for you. Because a lot of the times people say, oh, I'm gonna do PTE because of this or that, but the reality is maybe PT might not be the best test for you. Or maybe if you've got a basic level of English, maybe it's better if you start with IELTS, you improve your skills, and then you start checking how PT is, and then you move into PT. This is something that happens, right? Doing one exam and then the other. And the same thing can be said in the opposite direction, because I don't have anything against PTE. There are also cases where, let's say, people go with PTE, but they have a basic level of English, and it's just a matter of time. It's going to take them a bit longer to get used to the exam format, to get used to basically performing in the test, but also knowing that, okay, it is going to take me some time to basically build up my vocabulary base, to build up my grammar, and to basically, let's say, start increasing that score. Whereas maybe with IELTS, it may be a little bit more time efficient. But there is, again, different cases. And of course, there is also the case of people who first try PTE and then they say, no, I don't like how this feels. I don't like the structure of the exam, or I don't like talking to the microphone, or I mean, again, there are many reasons, but this is just to name a few. So all in all, which one, if I have to pick one, I would say for sure, for with a basic level of English, IELTS it's definitely more, let's say, test taker friendly. So it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's a bigger, more approachable challenge. Now, talking about IELTS, and this can apply to PTE as well, the next two questions are really interesting. Let me tell you. So it says, can you provide some strategies to advance from 5 to 6? And then key things to improve writing in IELTS from 7 to 8. Okay, so these two questions are similar yet different. There is a few things to think of, to be aware of. Is that a comment? No. Okay. Again, for those of you joining the live in the middle of the live, feel free to drop a comment, drop a question. We are talking about exams, but maybe there might be something else that you have a question. Maybe I say something and you want to double check. Just let me know. Okay. So the thing is that, for example, when it comes to going from a band 5 to a band 6, there might be a few things happening. Some of the, let's say, more common things that could be a challenge for us is the fact that we are making, for example, in the speaking section, it might be having a bit of hesitation. Hesitation is when we go and so doing a lot of that could impact your speaking score. I think it's not only like from 5 to 6, but I think that, like the more we do it, the more it will affect our score. Another thing has to do with accuracy. So, for example, in the speaking section, if we make a lot of mistakes, maybe it is a tiny mistake or maybe it is a big mistake, then doing these errors will affect our score. And another thing could be also not only the accuracy and not only the hesitation, but maybe like the content. Because what could be happening between a band 5 and a band 6 with the content is that maybe we are asked a question, and it could be that maybe the test taker doesn't really know. Not doesn't really know. That doesn't sound very good. But let's just say that we are asked about something, and then our answer is not fully answering that question. Maybe we go on a tangent, or maybe we mention a different topic, and this is something that tends to happen because we are nervous. And a quick tip is, whenever you're in the IELTS interview, if you are unsure, ask the examiner to repeat the question. You do not want to be doing that every single time, but you also don't want to be like, when did the examiner ask me? Is this what I was asked? And then you answer, because what could happen is that maybe they're expecting to hear a certain thing, and then you say something completely different, or maybe something different. And that could also be, let's say, affecting your score. This could be, again, not only between bands 5 and 6, but it could be even like at the higher bands as well. So it is always important to know what we're being asked, and we want to try to stay on topic. Okay, so that's one thing, for example, with speaking. But then what about the other bands? Going between a 5 to a 6, or a 6 and a 6.5, a 6.5 and a 7. In listening and reading, it is a bit, let's say, easier to explain, because in the exam we have 40 questions. So we have a range of questions, right? And it might be the case that, let's say, hypothetically speaking, for example, let's say that a band 5 score is getting 18 correct answers. So you get 18 out of 40, right? So like this is the max score, and maybe this is your score. But if you want to get a 6, maybe you need to get 22 correct answers. So it might be that a candidate that is on a band 5 maybe is just a few questions away to the next band up. And the same thing can be said for reading, but maybe with reading the scoring might change. But just to keep this example simple, let's imagine that with reading is the same. If you get a band 5, it means that your score was maybe 18 to 17, somewhere here. The top score is 40. And if you want a band 6, maybe you need to get 22 to 23 correct answers. So it might be a few questions away. Of course, please go to the washroom if you have to go. I normally tell students in class, if you need to go to the toilet, I really appreciate that you ask, but please go, because we don't want any emergencies in class. And if you go for more than half an hour, maybe something happened. But yeah, please go to the washroom. No worries. That is basically what how I would summarize going from a band 5 to a band 6 in the reading and listening sections. We need to be just trying, we need to aim for more correct answers. So this is like the biggest difference. And this is really challenging sometimes for us test takers, because what can happen is that maybe you get, let's say for example, a person needs a minimum of a 6, right? And sometimes we see a 5.5 and we feel terrible. It's like, oh my god, so bad, I needed 6, I got a 5.5. But sometimes maybe the gap between those two, it's only maybe one or two correct answers. So I tell students this so that we don't feel so discouraged, or sometimes, people are very tough on themselves. And it might be the case that you were just one question away from getting a band 6, or again, a band 6.5, or a band 7, etc. And this should be both good news for us and relaxing, in the sense that maybe it is not as bad as we think it is. I can tell you from experience, when I had to take the exam, like if I didn't get the band score I needed, I would be like, oh my God, my English is terrible. How come I failed the test? And you start telling all these things to yourself. But then after becoming a teacher, obviously improving my English skills and seeing the scoring of the test, then a part of me goes, okay, look, obviously it is not great when we don't get the score we want, but maybe we were just one or two questions away. Sometimes it could be like we were really far away. Like if you need to get a 6 and you get a 5, you're like, okay, we are not talking about one question. Maybe it is like 3, 4, maybe worst case scenario, let's say 5 correct answers. So now, yes, it is a bit more challenging, because we are talking about 10% of the score that needs to go up. But it is not something that, again, that you should be like, oh, this is terrible, but rather just using, let's say, that experience to keep improving and knowing, okay, I'm just a few questions away. I feel that it is a much healthier way of approaching this one. Now, when it comes to the writing, this is where things get interesting. And let's just try to make the stream interesting. I'm going to share my screen and give you a few examples. Let's see. Be nice to me. Just bear with me, because I mean, I'm so used to sharing my screen when it comes to Zoom and Microsoft Teams. But with this one, let's see. So if I do this, it should be, I think everyone should be seeing this. So let's put here live. Let's see. And I've got a comment too. Okay. Let's just give me 1 second. I've got everything here. Thank you so much about that one, Rather. And it's so true. It's like practice makes perfect. I talk about that. And I don't like to come here and tell people, oh, yeah, you just need to do this trick or do this or do that, because the reality is, I normally tell students, better English skills usually means better test scores. It also means that we feel more comfortable in the test, but again, I'm maybe going to leave that for another video. And let's say, for example, going from a band 5 to a band 6 in writing. Yeah, because in writing is, this is what the other person asked. By the way, if you feel like getting in touch, or you want to ask questions, obviously you can use the chat box, and thank you. But also, the other thing is that I'm quite active on Instagram as well, so feel free to give me a follow at Teacher Emilio D. All my social media is Teacher Emilio. And then on Instagram, like I had a poll the other day, and then people were asking. Okay, so going from a band 5 to a band 6, I think, just to give you 2 examples of things that could go wrong, I want you to be thinking about grammar, and then I want you to think about vocabulary. And look, Rather, you mentioned a good point, which is the elimination part in reading. This can be on itself a whole video, I will get into that. I want to touch up on that. But first, let's think about, again, going from a band 5 to a band 6. Let's say, for example, if we say something like, it could be, this is maybe for a lot of us, you're going to be like, Emilio, people don't make that mistake. This is too easy. But maybe it's like this. For example, my house. Imagine that someone is writing an essay or maybe writing the letter, right? I'm going to put this one here. This person didn't ask if it is for general or academic. So let's imagine that we are talking about an essay, okay? And imagine the sentence says the following: my house. So if we have a sentence like this, my house have 5 rooms, maybe as you are watching this, you are like, Emilio, this is wrong, right? It shouldn't be have, because my house is the same as it, right? Because it is an object. So we don't say it have, that's incorrect, right? That's incorrect. Normally what we do, or what we say, sorry, is it has, right? Then happy face. So, for example, it could be that there are many little errors like this, or it could also be in the same grammar part. Let's grab the same sentence, right? So we have, let's say, example number 1. How does this look? Let's see. Okay, cool. So it's not too bad. I mean, I like how, I was thinking maybe I need to make the font bigger, but maybe you're like, no, 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 Emilio, that's good. Let me know if I should make the font bigger. All right. Now let's look at this a second example, but with the same sentence, but a different mistake. So, oh, it's not letting me. Okay, number 2. So now let's say bye-bye to this. So the mistake is not going to be with the verb. Let's make the mistake with the noun. So we're going to say, for example, my house have, no, sorry. Let's imagine we go like this. Essay on, no, Ohio. Okay, nice. Checking out from America. That's awesome. So for example, here, now what we have is, we have my house has, so that's correct. Yeah, it has 5 room. Here, the problem is that we need, like in the example at the top, this is incorrect because basically this should have an S. It should be, my house has 5 rooms. And why is that the case? Well, because 5, wait, let me do a mini drawing, because 5 is basically telling us about the rooms. And in this case, we would say 1 room, 2 rooms, 3 rooms. Yeah, so we need to add an S. It is maybe something that you might be watching thinking, Emilio, that's too simple. That mistake doesn't happen to me, or I don't make that mistake. That's okay. This is just one way to just show you little things that could be happening. And maybe when you think about it, this is just this is just 2 little examples, but it could be the case that a lot of this happens, right? Another, I mean, I was telling you about the S, but with a lot of verbs, this happens a lot when you have, for example, play, and then you say play, or walk, walks. With a lot of different verbs, this tends to happen. And usually the case is the fact that we have a lot of little mistakes. Sometimes it's not like, oh my God, I cannot understand what you what you wrote. But it is more like, basically, we need to, let's say, work on these little areas, because a lot of little things could be impacting your score. And especially going from a band 5 to a band 6, these mistakes could be happening. It could also be what I was telling you before. It could be like the content, maybe like jumping between topics. That could also be a challenge. And does that mean that these are the only mistakes? No, there are other things. But to keep, let's say, the example simple, I would say that most likely this is happening. Another thing that could also be happening is that maybe our, let's say, let me put it here, our writing is too simple. And when I say too simple, I'm putting it in with quotation marks, because what I'm trying to suggest with this is that maybe we have just too many basic sentences, and maybe at the band 5 it may not be that common. I think this maybe is more common on band 6. And the challenge is that we basically want to show the examiner, we want to show in our writing a mix. We don't want to stay with something too basic. We want to slowly show how much we know. And if we keep our writing or our speaking too simple, that can be a problem, because we are not showing that. An example I tell students is that, for example, in the interview, imagine if you say, let's this is going to be, I mean, take this example with a pinch of salt, okay? But imagine you're in your interview, right? In the speaking test, let's say speaking test, and then the examiner asks you, what do you like the most about your city, or the city where you live, let's say, about the city where you live, right? So you are asked that question, and let's imagine, okay, I live in Melbourne, Australia, so let's use Melbourne as an example. I could say in my answer, uh, I love I love the coffee culture in my city, but I do not like the weather, right? This is quite good, because we are answering the question and we are adding more details. We're adding more information. How are we doing that? Well, we are using the word but. So we are adding contrast to our answer. Is that good? Yes, we want to do that. Not all the time, but we want to do this. And now that I have this, then I love the coffee culture in my city, but I don't like the weather. Cool. So the next step is, let's imagine that we have this same answer, okay? And let's say that the test taker says, instead of saying the word but, let's imagine it's the test taker says, however, or although. In this case, maybe this is not the best way to use the word however, or maybe with although, let's put although as well. Although I don't like the weather, those two words are acting the same as the word but. What is this doing when we think about our scores, when we think about going from band 5 to band 6, or from band 6 to 7? With band 7 to 8, I think I have better examples for you. Okay. And what will happen is that we are showing this in the interview, right? And this the same could be said with writing. Do you always need to use all these more, let's say, challenging, sophisticated, academic, more difficult words that maybe we don't use on day-to-day practice all the time? Well, you don't need to use them on every single sentence, but you do want to show, right? I think from a band 5 to a band 6, this will definitely help. It might be also the case that maybe using a bit more vocabulary, more vocab related to the topic is going to help. So this is again a big thing that we can do in speaking, but also what I'm showing you with this one, we could also do this with writing, and it is going to help us. With writing, we need to be a little bit more careful, because, for example, if in the speaking that might be okay, but with writing, we need to then start thinking about grammar, thinking about what is the main message that we want to convey from that sentence. So with writing, it can get a bit more difficult. So I would say that a few of these things are going to be like what determine going from a band 5 to a band 6. A quick other tip is maybe look at how you start the sentence, right? Because again, when I say the writing is too simple, maybe we could look at vocabulary, of course, but also maybe we can also look at how we start our sentences. That might be, again, another area where we can improve and, go from that band 5 to a band 6, while maybe not being too stressed in the process. Let's see, before we check band 7 to 8, another comment here. God bless, take care, respecting all the students and teachers. Thank you. All right. The next question, or the next part, was about going from a band 7 to a band 8. I'm going to stick with this same example, and the let's say the challenge with a band 7 to a band 8 is that now accuracy is even more important. So let's say, let me just grab this. I'm going to use one of these ones. All right, going from a band 7 to a band 8. Here, I think it is the biggest challenge for us now is we need to be very accurate. So accuracy is really important. And also we want to go ahead and, let's say, show even more about, we want to show more that mix of grammar and vocab that I was telling you about. So it could be that maybe, look, it depends a lot on the topic, but let's imagine we have something like, let's say that with a band 7 on an essay, maybe we have a sentence like this in our test. Let's say that we say something like, okay, so let's imagine we have something like this. Now we don't have, let's say, so simple vocabulary like we had in the previous example. And here I'm saying a massive problem affecting the world is large populations, right? And then maybe, let's say in some countries. Let's imagine, look, I would argue maybe this is not fully a band 7, but let's imagine that we have this sentence, right? And the analogy I want to give you to basically go from a band 7 to a band 8 will also apply if we want to go from a band 6 to a 7, or 6.5 to a 7, or 7.5 to 8. And it is basically finding things that we can improve. So for example, here, the biggest thing, or one thing that I notice that people do not do that much, is here when we have, for example, large populations, think about what else we could say that is going to be maybe like a better word, more fit in this case, that is going to show that we have, again, remember, we always want to show a broad mix. We want to show that we know a lot of, let's say, challenging words, right? So here, maybe instead of saying large populations, we could say, let me bring this here, maybe we could say overpopulation. Or maybe, because we're saying overpopulation in some countries, maybe here it's where we could say, okay, and then maybe instead of saying some countries, we could go ahead and say in, for example, developing countries, maybe. Or again, maybe instead of countries, because we normally put country, 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 we could say nations, right? So see how we are slowly shifting, let's say, the how, what's a good way to put it? We are basically, again, showing more grammar, or sorry, not more grammar, we're showing a more range of vocabulary. And the other thing is that we are doing this under test conditions. So obviously, we're going to be rewarded for doing things like this. Instead of large populations, we could say overpopulation, maybe in developing nations. Or maybe we could say, I don't know, instead of saying overpopulations, maybe we could say overpopulated. And by doing this now, we have to change, because if we put overpopulated, obviously we cannot say overpopulated in developing nations. But what we may have to do is say something like, maybe a massive problem affecting the world is how, let's say, how, maybe instead of saying, again, developing nations, let's say something that, again, can raise up the bar even more. What could be? What do you think? What could be another word that we say that is not developing nations? Developing. So we went from in some countries, yeah, developing nations, that's good. We could also say third world countries, Anything else? Anyone in the chat? Wait, chat, yep. In the chat. Anything? Have a guess? No? A bit shy? Let's see. Okay. All good. Now, maybe we could say, instead of saying in developing nations, maybe we could say in emerging economies. And this is again maybe going into what I said before of more specific vocabulary from a topic. So maybe we say, instead of saying in some countries, in developing nations, maybe in emerging economies. This is probably, again, depending on the topic, that could be referring to those countries that are, let's say, not fully third world countries, but they are not also all developed. They're not developed like, first world countries as we know in, let's say, many parts of Europe, right? So this is again things that we want to do when it comes to this one, when it comes to our writing. I guess this first example I just told you is more with vocabulary, but with grammar we could do the same. And it might be something similar to what we did here, but maybe within grammar it could be doing more, or let's say using more complex grammatical structures. And one example might be using conditionals, or maybe using, let me put here, like conditionals, or maybe using things like must, should, which maybe on its own is not going to be like, oh, use a should and you will get a band 8. But maybe it might be a combination of these ones, of maybe must or should, with some of these, let's say, with these words, that is going to help us to go from that band where we are stuck, or let's say in this case a band 7, all the way to a band 8. Another thing that is important to mention is notice how we went. Let's just now notice one important thing. Notice how we added a prefix here. So we have the word population, which is, let's say, band 6, or let's say population could be, I don't know, band 5 to 6. Not super hard, but not super easy. And then how can we go and get at band 7? Well, maybe we can add a prefix or a suffix. In this case, we are adding a prefix and we're saying overpopulation. So that's maybe, let's say, getting to the band 7. And then to the band 8 is going to be a mix of doing that, but not only with one word. I don't want you to think like, oh, to get band 8, I just have to change one word. And I think the same thing can be said with any bands. This is like when we look at our writing as a whole, and we have these characteristics, or we have these features that we are talking about, we don't want to just be like, okay, I have one sentence, or I have an essay, I wrote, I don't know, let's say 70 words in a paragraph. I'm just going to put one difficult word like this in every sentence. That's not what I'm talking about. It's more like when you look at the essay as a whole, it's like, okay, we can see that throughout the essay, we see this with good accuracy. A big thing is that accuracy is important. There is no point in using words like overpopulation if maybe it is not the correct place to use it, or maybe if we don't have the right spelling, or maybe if, and this I think happens also a lot with these types of words, with words like however, although, moreover, furthermore. On the other hand, sometimes people just think, okay, I'm just going to use it and it sounds good. I have seen it in essays. Maybe my teacher showed me this in class, and that's it. And maybe it is good, but again, accuracy. Maybe it is not where it should be, or it's not the right place or moment, if it is the speaking part, to use it. So doing a few of these things, I think, will be definitely helping when it comes to going from one band to another. And let's see. And again, basically, it is a matter of getting comfortable with these things. And let me stop sharing for now. And again, I think a lot of the times the challenge with this is the fact that we think, okay, I need to do this only one thing, or I'm just going to change one thing to go from a band 7 to an 8 in the case of writing. But maybe it's not only just doing that. It could be doing that. It could be maybe again how we start the sentences. It could be a lot of different things. It could be even the structure. A common error that students make, it's sometimes starting the essay and jumping right in their introductions, and basically saying this is good because of this, or this is bad because this. And maybe that's not the best thing to do, because and this is where maybe this is also like a cultural difference, because in our, let's say, mother tongue, maybe in Spanish or whatever mother tongue you have, maybe or whatever mother tongue you speak, I should say, maybe it is there are different approaches to essays. But for, let's say, test preparation purposes, you want to basically use the introduction to, like as the name says, to introduce. You want to use the introduction to tell the reader what is the topic or what they will read, or in this case not only the reader, because you are not writing a blog, like when you what you're telling the examiner, right? So you're basically saying, Mr. Or Miss Examiner, let's say, examiner, dear examiner, I will tell you about this topic. This essay is about this. That is in essence the purpose of the introduction. So it could be also a matter of our structure. So I would say paying attention to all these little things can definitely help. And what else have we got? Oh, and then people asking about my courses. Well, another thing, if you're watching this, or like if this sounds good and you're like, Emilio, let's study together. Usually, what I would do is that every month, depending on availability, I may have different types of courses. For example, in September, in like literally 2 days, I'll have a course. We are going to be having 2 classes per week. It's going to be with small groups, with me, obviously. And the course also includes a lot of extra materials. So, this could be a good opportunity if you want to present your IELTS soon, let's say in the next 3 to 6 months. It will be good. Sometimes students come because they want to get a lot of practice for their test. Other times students took the test, they cannot get the score they need, and then they come to the course to, like, again, get a lot of practice, a lot of feedback from a teacher who has been helping students with their test. And that is definitely an option. I invite you to reach out either via social media with Instagram, for example. That's like one where I'm very big, or very active, I should say. Maybe on YouTube, feel free to let me know, or even email. I think email is also quite good. I get student requests via email as well, and feel free to do that. My email is emilio@teacheremilio.com. I will also put it in the description of the live. If you're watching this maybe at a later date and you go like, oh, let me check if there is a course this month. I just told you that this course is 2 classes per week for 4 weeks, but sometimes maybe we have like more intensive courses when we maybe have less classes in shorter amounts of time, or maybe we have longer courses. So the best thing to do is to just get in touch, and then I can tell you, well, look, this month we have this, or maybe this month we don't have courses, but maybe we have webinars, or maybe we have these other things happening. And last but not least, there is also my Patreon page. This is also a good extra way to practice, because if you like what we did in the live on Patreon, we do that in way more detail. So, for example, a video where we analyze an essay together, we break down how to structure our essay. A video where I'm marking an essay, or things like that. I feel that if you are either an IELTS or a PTE test taker, or even someone who wants to practice a bit more, and you want to improve your English skills, I would highly recommend you think of joining. I will also leave it here in the description below. You can go and check it out. And it's a monthly membership. I've got a small community there, and usually when students join, whatever you're doing when it comes to extra practice, or if you're watching a video and anything is a bit unclear, you can always get in touch, and then obviously I'm here to help you out. And that could be quite good in case that there is a busy month and we cannot meet in class, or maybe we cannot meet in a course, or maybe not meet in a webinar. But yeah, usually you will see me there helping students. You will also see me here on YouTube. And this live was extremely nice. And again, if you're watching the replay, thank you for joining me. If you were watching, unless you have any other questions, maybe we can finish up now. because we covered like the main questions people asked. Feel free to drop a question in the comments, especially if you're watching the replay, because I'm planning to be doing more live streams, and that way I can, continue helping you out. And it's a really cool way of meeting. I'm having a really good time. I hope that you are enjoying this too. And for those of you watching and checking, big thank you. Any more comments? Let's see. For some of the viewers, any comments? Anything? Oh, sorry, not this way. Any comments? Okay. Emilio, all good for now. Look, we hit 50 minutes. Look at that. This could be a podcast episode on its own. Once again, big thank you. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the live. And sorry, not subscribe to the live. What am I saying? Subscribe to the channel. And I'll finish editing that video I told you about IELTS versus PTE, because now that the test changed, I feel that, it is becoming more difficult. Which exam should I do? Should I do IELTS? Should I do PTE? Should I go for this one? Should I go for the other one? And I know it can be tricky. It can be hard. And well, that video will be up on YouTube soon. Again, wishing you a happy Sunday, or I don't know, maybe Thursday. No, not Thursday. Maybe Saturday night for some of you. Or, well, again, if you're watching the replay, I just hope you have an awesome day. Take care. I will see you on the next video.